Hey guys, and welcome to my favorite day crafts. This video today is another part for my tutorial series on how I do my 8x8 mini albums. So I already uploaded two other parts for this series in which I showed you my favorite tools to use and how I like to prepare for my mini albums and also how I like to do my album covers. And as you can read by the title, this video today is about the binding system I like to use for my mini albums. So there's a lot of different binding methods you could use, but I actually prefer the hidden hinge binding. So in this video today, I want to show you how I personally like to do the hidden hinge binding and also which measurements I like to use for my 8x8 mini albums. Okay, so before we start, I just want to say that the hinge I will do will be for a 3-inch spine and it will hold 4 different page units. So we will do 4 hinges in total. To do the hidden hinge, you would need a scoreboard and a bone folder and also some very strong adhesive. So I prefer tape, but you could also use red glue instead. And then of course you also need some heavyweight cardstock, which you can cut to size 8 by 13.5 inches. So 8 inches you would need because our pages are going to be 8 by 8 inches. So you want to have the hinge the same height as the page. And as I told you in a previous video, I really like to get my heavyweight cardstock in the size A3. So for the length of 13.5 inches, A3 works really well. These measurements are for 1-inch large hinges with a half of an inch gap in between. With 1 inch, my hinges are quite large, so if you don't have A3 sized cardstock, you could just change the size of the hinge to 3/4 of an inch. I think that would work perfectly fine as well. And I will also provide the measurements for this alternative in the description box below. For the first step, you just need your scoreboard and your bone folder and of course the heavyweight cardstock. And I always like to start at the 2-inch mark, so that's where I score my first scoring line. And this leaves me enough space to later attach the hinge to the album cover. So this is not the first hinge yet, it's just the space you would want to have next to the hinges on both sides. So for the first hinge, as I said, I want my hinges to be 1 inch large. So the next scoring line I do at 3 inches. And then I continue with 1-inch step at 4 inches. And now, as I said before, you want to have a gap between your hinges. And my gap, I like to do half of an inch. So I continue with scoring at 4.5 inches. And then 5.5. And 6.5. So this will be our second hinge. And then you want to have a gap again and you continue with 7 inches. And then 8 inches. Nine inches. 9.5 for the last gap. And then 10.5. And the last scoring line will be at 11.5. So you don't need a gap after the last hinge because you will have your 2 inches again. What's important now is that you actually take your cardstock and you turn it around. because the side of the cardstock where you actually scored your score lines is never going to be the same side to also fold the score lines. So turn your cardstock around and then get a pencil and write down the numbers for the hinges. So I write down 1, 1 and then an X for the gap, 2, 2, X, 3, 3, X and 4, 4. And now I turn around my paper so that I have the first hinge on the bottom. It's just how I like to do it. And then I get my 1-inch tape. So this fits perfectly for the 1-inch hinges. And I also got my small metal ruler, which I like to use to rip off the tape, but you don't really need it. You could also just use your scissors. So as you can see, I just placed the tape on the first hinge, so just on one part of the hinge. So that's where you will glue the two parts together. So you always need to place tape on one of the parts. So I always do the first one. So now I place it on 3. And then on 4. Now you can remove the tape from the first hinge, and then you fold up the cardstock at the score line between 1 and 1. So fold up the cardstock, and then I always like to get my large bone folder to burnish down the paper so that the two parts of the hinge will stick together very well. And then you want to fold the cardstock down at the score line. Burnish your cardstock again, and then you just want to repeat the steps. So remove the tape from the second hinge, fold up your cardstock between 2 and 2, and then bring your cardstock down at the score line on the bottom of the hinge. Fold it down, score your cardstock, and the same for the third hinge. So remove the tape, fold up your cardstock in between what we marked as 3 and 3, burnish down your paper, and fold down the cardstock at the score line again. And the same for the last hinge. So now we want to fold up the cardstock in between 4 and 4, burnish down our paper, and fold everything back on the score line. So this leaves you with the bottom of your hinge, and you will just be able to see the 3 X's. And now when you turn it around, that's where you have your hinges. And as you can see, all the hinges are like laying to one side. And you just want to fold down the hinges to the other side, burnish it down so that your hinges are flexible and you will be able to stand them up. And that's how you want your hinges to be. So you want to have them standing up. So that's basically it. So you're done with your hinge. But to attach the pages to the hinge, you would also need to place tape on the hinge. So, and I always like to do it before I attach my hinge to the album cover because I think it's way easier. So as you can see here, I get my 3/8 of an inch tape and I just place it on the top of each of the hinges. Once you have attached the tape on each of the hinges, you can then turn around your construction and fold all the hinges up again so that they lay to the other side, and burnish it down so that it's like laying flat. But as you can see, it won't really lay flat, so it's a little bit of a struggle to attach the tape. But yeah, just repeat the steps and place the tape on the other side as well. And when I'm done placing the tape on both sides, I just get my large bone folder again, and then I burnish down the tape so that it sticks well to the paper. Now we also want to cut off the edges on each of the hinge, and for this we get our small scissors, and then, as you can see, start cutting from the bottom of the tape you just placed, and then cut at an angle inwards so that you cut off a little edge. Repeat this on each side, so you have to repeat it 8 times. And as you can see, I like to do one side first, so one side of all the hinges. And I also like to fold back the construction so that I see properly where I cut. After I finished one side, I turn around the whole construction and then I continue with the other side. And this little angle corner will be very helpful for when we want to attach our pages to the hinge. So this is actually how far we want to attach the page. So the page is going to be right to the bottom of the tape, and this edge helps us so that the page is not going any further. Now your hinge is basically ready to be attached to the album cover. And I like to use my 2-inch wide score tape as well to attach it to the cover. So I just get my tape and then I start by placing it on the bottom of my hinge. And I like to do it like this because you really have to be careful that you don't have tape hanging from the edges of the hinge. Well, at least not from the bottom and the top. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it hangs from the left or the right side because this part will be covered with cardstock as well. So this is the part on the front and back cover. But yeah, you have to be careful with the bottom and the top part. So then I continue and I place my tape on the top. And after placing it on the bottom and the top, and as you can see, there is a little bit of a space left, which is not covered with tape on the bottom and the top. It's just a tiny bit, but that doesn't matter. And then I place the tape in between, and also the tape will be on top of each other in the last step. But that doesn't matter as well. You can still remove the tape backing. And after placing the tape, I again make sure that I burnish everything down because it's very important that the tape sticks to the paper, especially for the hinge, as the hinge will hold our pages. Okay, so now we can get our album cover and just open it up. And then to attach the hinge to the album cover, I always make sure that the middle of the hinge, which is actually between hinge 2 and hinge 3, will be aligned to the middle of the spine as well. And for the middle of the spine, we also have a guide, as you can see, because when we wrapped our album cover, we made sure that the 2 cardstock pieces were attached to each other right at the middle of the spine. So that's what you can see here. So if you don't feel confident to just eyeball it and place your hinge like this, you could also, before you remove the tape, just take your pencil and mark where you want to attach the hinge. And if you just mark on the chipboard, that's no problem, because as I said before, this will be covered as well. And you also want to make sure that you leave the same space on the top and the bottom of the hinge. And then I always get my bone folder again, and I really take my time to burnish down the cardstock, because it's important that the hinge will stick very well to the spine. So yeah, I just flap the hinges and make sure that I burnish in between the hinges, so on the gaps as well. And after burnishing everything down, you can stand up back your hinges, and that's it for attaching the hinge. But to be able to close the cover again, you need to take your bone folder, and I always take my left hand to hold the front cover, and then I take my right hand to use the bone folder and just press the front cover against the bone folder while scoring between the spine piece and the front cover piece. So this gives you back this scoring line. And I do the same with the back cover. So yeah, now you're done with making and attaching the hinge. So I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and I would love to get your feedback in the comments as well. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, see you in my next video. Bye!